This is illiterate. My name is Evan.
My name is Taylor. I read the book this week.
And this week I couldn't do anything. This week we're doing Aladdin and the Magical Lamp, one of the books from 1001 Nights, or the Arabian Nights.
Let's talk about it.
It has so many different iterations. So however you know it, we're doing Aladdin. Let's get into it.
Here we go. First of all, tell me why you couldn't do anything.
Yeah, this was astounding. So,
because normally what we do is I read the book. Evan has some other connection. Watching
I go and do some other some side reading, some extended research under like a totally different point of view of it, something like that. So I was trying to watch the cartoon, the magical Disney film, and me and my girlfriend became so frustrated when we spent an hour just trying to get a copy of this thing. It's not available anywhere. And I mean anywhere. We looked through all of the streaming services. We looked everywhere in public. Like, we tried to go to Target. Like, we were looking at Walmart, and like, we could not get a copy of this thing, physical or digital, no matter what. We did, however, find the ripoff, the ripoff animation that was available on Microsoft stores. So if you want to watch the ripoff Aladdin, that's available to stream, but not the original. So yeah, we spent an hour just trying to get a copy of this thing, and it was absolutely unreachable. Just unreachable in every facet. It was a complete
but you remember it
loss.
Enough.
It was a total loss.
Yeah. But you remember enough. And hopefully everybody remembers.
Certainly remember enough here and there. We did some refreshing, so...
Yeah.
But yeah, that
and the
was
new
just
movie, this is also why we're doing this, because the new movie is out today.
The new movie, yeah, it just came out, what was it, 2 weeks ago, a week ago?
No, it'll be today.
Today? Look at me. God.
So here we are. Our tricks revealed. We record these in the past. The 1001 Nights, also called the Arabian Nights, very old book. It's an anthology, you could say, of a series of different stories collected over many, many centuries from Arabic, Persian, Indian, Greek, Turkish, Jewish stories. The first instance that we can find where somebody has collected and corroborated these different things comes from a 9th century Persian book called The Thousand Stories, which then got changed to The Thousand Nights, and then The 1001 Nights.
The Arabian Nights.
Yeah, or the Arabian Nights.
1001 Arabian Nights.
Yeah. It's just a compilation.
1,000 Arabian Nights.
The Nights of Arabia, which are 1001. So the framing story for this thing, this is where this first 9th century part comes, is there's a ruler in Arabia, and his wife cheats on him. Also, I should mention, firstly, it's violently racist and, stereotype. Just like it's written in the 9th century, there's slaves and concubines and
Think about it as a portal back to that time. This is where people's minds were at.
Yeah,
it's
a
interesting.
dislike of other races and customs that I don't understand, and all of that stuff.
Pretty dense stuff, huh?
Right. So, keeping all that in mind, his wife cheats on him, which he has, concubine. Like, who knows? There's no justice there.
There's no rules. It's a wild.
He's pissed. Yeah, he's pissed. So he doesn't trust women anymore. And
one does
when someone cheats on you. So he decides, well, I'm gonna just have a new virgin every night, and then I'm gonna kill him.
Oh my god!
And he does this for 3 years.
What?
Yeah, this is the start of the 1001 Nights.
This is excessive.
So his advisor, the vizier, he's like, "Where's my next lady?
Line them up, bring her in."
Yeah, there's nobody. There's hardly nobody left.
Like, it's like actually a cattle drive. Like, it's just like you're sending the next cow to be murdered, basically. Like, it's just soon she will be murdered.
And there's no eligible women left except for the vizier's daughters.
It's like they're not tissues.
But this is the culture in the time of the 9th century.
My God.
Everybody dying. So the vizier's like, well, I'm not going to give up my daughters. They're the only ones left, though. But luckily, his daughters are very well educated. They know a lot of stuff, very well versed in culture and philosophy and science and history and all the different things that you would get being the daughter of this guide to the kingdom. So she says, I'll do it. The daughter's name that is first to go is Shahrazad, and her whole thing is she says, "Well, we're gonna get in the room, and I'm gonna ask if I can speak to my sister before you kill me," kind of thing. So then I'm gonna call the sister over, and she's gonna say she wants to hear a story, and the king will be intrigued and agree just one story before we go to bed, kind of thing.
Okay.
Until the morning, and then in the morning she gets killed. Right. So Shahrazad calls her sister in and says, "Hey, I'm going to tell a story." And the king says, "Cool." And then the whole night goes by. She's telling this story. It ends on a cliffhanger. And the king says, "Well, I want to know. You can stay alive for another day, but we got to finish this story tomorrow night." She continues the story, ends on a cliffhanger. He says, "Well," and so on and so forth. Hence, the 1001 Nights. He stays listening to her tell these stories until he realizes women are not bad, pardons her, and goes about his day understanding humanity and the betterment of all things through all of these stories and the 3 years that she's there telling them.
So 6 years altogether? So 3 years of murdering women
and 3 years
every
of
night,
listening
and
to
3
these
years
stories.
of listening to
Yeah.
her, and then he kind of got it.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So a big
Like, oh, I guess they're not all bad.
you
Oh,
can
yeah, maybe not.
So that so that's the framing device for why, which I think is neat to
Yeah.
have that as opposed
That's
to just
cool,
being like,
yeah.
here's a bunch of stories. Misconception. It's not 1001 stories. It's 1001 nights that she's telling the stories.
Right.
So sometimes the
She's
stories,
she's trying to get to tomorrow.
and she's trying, and so the premise of it is she's trying to keep him interested and keep the thing going.
Yes.
So for a lot of it, the way that it works is there's stories nested within stories. So there'll be a story about the king doing something, and then he'll seek wisdom from his advisor, and the advisor will say, "Well, let me tell you a story about whatever," and then he'll go on that story. And in the story about the farmer and the whatever, the farmer is telling a story
The
to
first
his
Lost.
Yeah. So it's just the inception of story inside story. I looked it up, and I think sometimes it goes
Do you
five.
think somebody's holding J.J. Abrams captive? Just like, and if you don't create some absurd twist with this right now, we're gonna go. This is it. I hope that's just been his driving force the last 20 years. It's like they're gonna kill me.
We will talk about at the end some influences that people might know that is based off of.
Oh yeah.
So stick around for that. But there's like 5 or 7 layers. I couldn't figure out exactly that's how deep some of these stories go.
Deep.
And they may take place over multiple nights as opposed to being 1001 stories.
Common misconception.
So
don't be fooled. No.
Don't be fooled. Depending on the translation and who's doing what, there could be 200 plus stories in this thing. It's 16 volumes. The version that I picked up, which is a translation by Sir Richard Francis Burton, which came out in 1885. Just because that was the one that I could find about Aladdin and his wonderful lamp, which is one of the stories that she tells in the middle of these volumes. The original translation that first got translated to European audiences was in 1704. This French guy, Galland, did a translation. The thing is, and this is strange to realize, is the classic stories that we as Westerners know, such as Aladdin and Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves and Sinbad the Sailor, these 3 main ones were not in any of the previous discoverings of the Persian texts and whatnot. So most people assume he made them up. So like the ones that we know to be
his own fanfic in there, slipping it in.
The classic stories of the 1001 Nights
And then
are
they
not
become the
actually.
poster boys. Wow.
Yeah, some European guy made
How
up.
Hollywood.
How 1704 Hollywood for him to just come up with them on his own.
Look at that. We thought we were clever.
And we're not.
No, they've been ahead of this.
So I'm going to talk about Aladdin from that version. Although
Fascinating.
there was, the most recent one that was a retranslation based on the same texts that this Burton guy did came out in 2008. So if you wanted to read...
It's a new translation?
Right.
Oh, a fresh translation?
Yeah, the most recent one is 2008. So...
That's interesting.
But I couldn't get that one. So, and I wanted to see...
Under lock and key, ladies and gentlemen.
I wanted to see the classic one, because they said the Burton one has way more... He was just obsessed with the sexuality of it, so there's a lot more
Now that would be interesting, just to look at all the translations and you could just see what people are into and thinking about.
Yeah, he really ups the sexual content and glorifies it and whatnot. So I was like,
All right, Burton.
let me you can tone it down a little bit. So I'm going to jump into the plot, and we can see how it's different and where some things they pulled from, and then later on other movies that they made based on the Arabian Nights and the
Cool.
1001 Nights, other elements that they pulled from for the Disney film.
So I'm giddy.
Here we go. It's called Aladdin or The Wonderful Lamp. Either one, just as important.
The name doesn't matter.
It starts out, and this proves how unknown the European translators are. It says he's from China, which they just combine everything that isn't Europe into
Hot
one
out of the
thing.
gate. China.
It's somewhere over there. Fantastical, mystical.
Yeah, but yeah.
Because there's a lot of mention to Arabic and Arabian sensibilities,
Yeah.
and they're Muslim and like all these things that is definitely not in China.
Well, there might be different flavors over there, but yeah, same thing.
Aladdin starts out as kind of a jerk. His dad is a tailor, not me.
Ugh.
His dad, he's me. His dad is a tailor, and he doesn't want to be a part of the family business. They describe him as a ne'er-do-well and a scapegrace, which I didn't know what a scapegrace was.
What is that? What is it? Tell me what escape
So
race
it
is.
literally means escapes grace.
Oh wow, that's
Like
the
his-
most direct.
Yeah. But I'm going to use that from now on. That old
Scapegrace.
scapegrace. But that's the old 1800s translation that I'm
It's
reading.
my lot in life.
Is to be a scapegrace. His father dies, classic, from pain and sadness of the way that his family is going out.
Ooh.
And then his mother is now a widow and has to become a cotton spinster. And there's Aladdin still being a scapegrace, gallivanting about. There's a stranger magician in the land that sees
Is he hitting up the ladies? How is he
He's
gallivanting?
15. No, he's just
so
gallivanting
running
about.
and, he's flying kites through the street and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
like,
and just
knocking
being
over
a
trash cans.
goofball,
Cool. Gotcha.
not taking responsibility for anything. Not help.
Gotcha.
Like his mom is working all the time at home. He should take up the family business.
Yeah, he could,
considering your father died because you're such a doof. But he doesn't. But this stranger who's a magician
What an idiot.
sees him and says, "Who are you?" And it says, "Oh my God, it's my long lost nephew. I've known all along." And he's like, "I don't know about a lost uncle." And he's like, No, I'm a lost uncle." So he meets them at home.
I promise.
He's like, "What are you going to do, Aladdin? Get your act together." So he says he'll help him become a merchant. So he gets him clothes. They goof around the town. They visit other merchants. Aladdin realizes, oh, I can do this. And he's, of course, doe-eyed about all the glory of being this merchant. It was funny because, so right here at the start, it's almost like as the reader, you don't have to necessarily keep the story going because I'm not the girl who's trying to stay alive for 1001 Nights.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they pad the story for that sake because they just spend a whole bunch of time talking about all the things he's doing as a merchant, which doesn't really have any consequence to the story. But I can imagine being the king and being like, "All right, let's wrap it up. Like, I gotta kill you tomorrow."
Yeah. I get it. She sells wooden trinkets. Okay.
Yeah. So that keeps coming up throughout the thing, and it's like I just skipped over those parts because I'm like, I don't need all of this stuff. So
How do you just feel the desperation in the text? just one more minute.
yeah, it's like when you're trying to write an essay and you say like, "From which the place of which I came," instead of. It's madness. It happens even within Aladdin. So now this merchant is got Aladdin. They go out past the city. And he's saying, "Oh, I found this." He does some incantation, and this marble slab appears on the earth into this cave.
Been there.
Classic. Been there, done that. Next. So he says, "Well, we got to go in there and open it up." And he's like, "Well," Aladdin's like, "Well, open it." And he's like, "I can't open it. You got to say your name, and then it'll open." Magic. So then he says his name. It opens under no problem whatsoever. He flips it open, and the magician says, "Now you got to go past these halls. You can't touch these 4 golden things. You got to go through the garden. Don't pick any of the jewels, and
Don't touch it.
climb up this ladder. Don't touch any of the stuff. Grab the lamp at the top of this ladder. Bring it back. Once you've touched the lamp, you can collect the jewels and stuff. But come back here and bring it to me, and then we can get all the fame and fortune and everything that's in this magical cavern." Aladdin's like, "Cool, sounds good." He grabs the jewels first, but nothing happens. and then grabs the lamp, comes back, grabs more jewels, is climbing up the stairs to him. And this is definitely I imagined it from the Disney one where he's like, the lamp, just give me the lamp. Aladdin's like, I can't, it's at the bottom of my pockets. There's all these jewels and stuff. Genuinely, it says in the book, he's not trying to fool the magician. He's just trying. He literally can't fit his hand into his pockets to give him the lamp. The magician gets pissed off, locks him in, does the incantations, covers it all up, traps him in there. Aladdin's like, oh, maybe he wasn't my uncle. He's a sorcerer. He's just trapped down there, and for whatever reason, the magic of the universe realized that only Aladdin, the pauper of a tailor's son, whatever, is the only person who can open this thing. But now he's trapped, and he's down there for 3 days, and doesn't...
That's an Elton John lyric. Pauper of a poor man's... Or what? Oh, man, now I can't think. It's in Leave On. You guys out there.
You'll know.
Pauper to a pawn on a Christmas day. I'm sorry.
There it is. There it is.
There it is. Anyway, sorry, say that again. Continue.
So he's got this ring that the magician gave him, and in his weeping and wailing and sadness, rubs it, and then a genie pops out of the ring.
Oh, yeah.
And says...
As naturally.
Yeah. And Aladdin's like, oh my god, a genie. And the genie says, well, you can wish for anything. And he says, well, I wish to be out of this cave.
Oh my god, Robin Williams?
Not yet. This is the genie from the ring.
No, I just imagine full-bodied Robin Williams coming out. Mystically coming out of a lamp.
But this isn't the lamp yet. This is the ring.
Oh,
there's more than one genie.
Cut all that out.
Come on, Evan. There's more than one genie. This is the ring genie.
Sorry, got you.
No, it's fine. We got to get our genies straight here. So the ring genie pops out, and he says, I'll do anything for you. Now, this is a lesser genie, which we'll find out later. He can't do everything.
Oh,
so
okay,
he just says, I want to get out of this cave. Poof, he's out of the cave. So then, now he's got this, now the genie then goes back into the ring, whatever. He comes back, and the mom's like, what in the world happened? You were gone. So then, he tells his mom the whole tale of everything that happens.
Oh, my God.
So we skip right on over that.
And biding her time, really reaching until she can come up with another plot point here.
So then, the mom's like, oh, well, what else did you get? And he's like, well, I got all these gems, awesome, and I got this lamp. And she says, well, we're going to sell this lamp for sure. So then it's dirty, so she rubs it, and then this giant Robin Williams genie comes out of the lamp. And they're just starving, because he hasn't eaten in 3 days, and she hasn't. They're poor. So he's like, well, I'll grant your wishes. What do you want? And they're like, well, let's get some food. And so then it's just these platters and trays of gold of food and whatever. So they eat that for a week, keep the lamp secret.
That just sparked something in me, because I'm imagining if I was poor and hadn't eaten in 3 days, and then suddenly I could just have platters of food at a whim. You don't need much more than that to feel like the richest man, like the most fortunate person on the face of the planet to go from 0 to 60 like that.
Well, and then this is even going off of that.
That'd be pretty amazing. Like, it reminds me of like in Jurassic Park when they come back from the park, the kids get back to the main part and there's just the dessert.
Yeah.
Like they've been through hell and you can see like they're just like dirty and gross and bleeding and there's just like ice cream. Jello,
yeah,
it's endless. And
this
can spark that.
So exactly. So you're on the right track. It continues with this. So they keep the lamp secret. They eat all the food, and they're like, "Well, now what are we gonna do?" So they go into town to sell the platters, as opposed to like rubbing the lamp again and getting more wishes or whatever. They're like, "Well, we got to make some money. We can't just like."
They thought practical.
Thought it was a one and done thing. So he goes to sell the platters. There's this shrewd merchant, and the merchant's like, "Well, how much you want for this?" And Aladdin's like, "Well, how much is it worth?" And he's like, "Oh, this crafty, a bargainer." But Aladdin just doesn't know anything. So then he says, "Oh, it's worth 1 gold piece."
For this 1 credit.
Yeah. And Aladdin's like, "Oh, sounds good." And then the merchant is like, "No, actually, I meant 1 copper piece. I'm sorry, I got the wrong thing." Aladdin's like, "No, we'll take 1 gold piece." And so he then, sells all the platters for a week to make the money, and then there's no platters left. This guy who's seen him with these platters, another merchant, is like, "Come over here. Let me see these platters."
Yeah, what are you doing?
So then he's like,
what's
"Who have you been? Yeah, who have you been selling this to?" And then here's when a racist part comes in.
Spoiler alert! Here's the racist part.
The merchant is like, "Oh, you were selling it to the Jewish merchant over there." These are actually worth 70 gold pieces. And so then he starts selling it to the other guy.
No, just skip right. Let me just skip right over that part.
Skip right past. You know what.
And then he starts selling to somebody else for no reason at all.
Yeah. Now, the merchant's like, wait, we gotta close up shop. And Aladdin's like, why? And they're like, well, the Sultan's daughter is coming into town, and nobody can look at her, and she's too beautiful, and she wants to just walk around the city, clear the streets.
I'm just imagining whose job it is to run up on people in the street or just like throwing blankets over people. Don't look at her!
Well, they just say,
Get
out of here. So they clear out. Aladdin hides behind something.
So he doesn't get tackled.
Her veil comes off. He does not get tackled, and he sees her beauty. He says, "Oh my goodness, it's the princess." It says in this, which is not weird, I guess, because I read through the footnotes, is that he thought all women resembled his mother because they have the veils and they're covering their face.
Freudian weird.
But I looked in the footnotes and it's like, well, I guess maybe it was Barton's weird translation thing or whatever, but or he's just stupid and doesn't know the cultural things, but he's assuming that every woman, and maybe this is the case, I don't know, has a veil covering their face, and so the only woman's face that he saw before being 15 was his mother.
Interesting, yeah.
So now she's like, oh, well, we gotta, he wants to marry her. And she's like, how in the world are you gonna marry this princess? And then he's like, well, we got all these jewels. Again, not even using the genie for anything. He's like, look at all these jewels we got.
Can't we use a genie to manipulate human thought any way you want?
Nope.
Make her love me.
Can't do it. Not in this story. So the mother then brings...
And we shouldn't, you know?
You know, that's why Disney put it in there.
Exactly.
But the mom brings the jewels to the king, and he's like, oh, this, you know, we got to get this locked down, marry whoever this is. But the vizier has a son, and so they're being secretive, shady, and so then the king agrees, like, well, I promise, but, like, let's give it 3 months, and let's see what happens. And she's like, that shady vizier said something to him. She goes back into the town, you know, time passes for a little bit, and then, oh, there's all this celebration. The vizier's son is going to marry the princess. And she's like, well, then, that son of a gun, my promise, you know? And then Aladdin is like, well, how do you know that is what happened? And then she tells Aladdin the whole tale about how she went to the thing with the jewels.
Always skip over that part.
So then Aladdin's like, well, now I got to use this genie for some shady purposes because I'm screwed. I'm trapped. So
I'm picturing this king sitting when we get to these like portions to just recount things that we've already been told. It's just like he's like the first generation frustrated cable viewer of just like I know the backstory of this. Right. I don't want to go through their point of view on it. I want to get to the main part.
Yeah, previously on Aladdin. So now we've got the genie, Robin Williams, coming in, and he wishes, since it's the marriage night, he wishes. And here comes some of Barton's sexual stuff. He wishes for them to be removed from their bed. So then Homegirl goes to Aladdin's bed in his creepy house out in the suburbs. And then the prince, or the soon-to-be new sultan, he wishes for him to get locked in the bathroom. And
wishes for Aladdin to get locked in?
No, he wishes for... So the prince and the princess are on their wedding night trying to consummate their love. And he wishes for both of them to get transported away from there. Oh. And the princess goes into bed with Aladdin, and the prince gets locked up in a creepy bathroom.
Oh. So she spends the night with Aladdin?
Mm-hmm. Terrified, though.
Interesting.
Aladdin doesn't do anything. No, like she's like freaked out.
Gotcha.
She's like, oh, I just got transported to this weird place, and there's this guy in bed with me.
Wow.
That's not the prince.
That would be pretty jarring.
And then the genie, it says, blows...
Good thing she didn't just go with it. That's what I was trying to get straight. I was just like, wait, hold on. How does she feel about this?
No, they're all freaked out. No, they're like, what in the world's going on? God. And it says purposefully, Aladdin doesn't do anything with her, just wants to like freak out the prince. But the genie blows...
It says out loud right here, Aladdin doesn't have the ball.
The genie blows a cold blast on the prince to shrivel him. It says, the prince is freaked out because he's in this creepy place. He doesn't know he's in Aladdin's bathroom for whatever reason.
Get these people out of Aladdin's house.
So then, the morning comes, Aladdin says poof, and then they go back to the place.
Where am I? Is that my husband in your back?
No, shut up!
Shut up! I don't know what happened. Who are you people?
And then in the morning, poof, they're back.
God.
And then the Sultan comes in. And she doesn't want to say what's going on, and he's embarrassed because his manhood is shriveled, and it looks like a disaster.
What a mess.
The whole night's been a disaster. So then the queen comes in, and the prince leaves, and the princess is able to explain to the queen what's going on, and she tells her the whole tale of everything that happened. The next night,
Fast forward to that trash.
The next night, they try to consummate their love again. Aladdin does the exact same thing again. This time, the Sultan comes in.
Well, that didn't work great last time, but maybe this time, I don't know. Maybe we can pull it together, guys. I don't know. It's just as weird.
That comes back again. Again, the Sultan comes in, and he's like, look, something's going on 2 nights in a row. You gotta explain to me what's going on. So then she tells him, the past 2 nights, everything that's happened.
You'll never believe this.
So now the Sultan is like, we're not gonna play around with this mess. The prince is cursed. Something's going on here. Doesn't trust his vizier, calls it off. Now it's 3 months. The mom comes back in, says, hey, you promised. The Sultan's like, well, we're going to demand, we can't have it. Something's going on here. We're going to demand a huge wealth flex. Like, not only is he going to give us more jewels, but he's got to have some handmaidens, and he's got to have some slaves, and he's got to have, like, how can he doesn't have all that stuff. Of course, genie, rubbing the lamp. Here we go. Give me all
Coming
that
in
stuff.
hot.
It reminded me of the Disney version where he's got all the elephants and the Prince Ali, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So then he comes in with that. They're like tight. They marry. He wishes for an incredible home. The genie makes it even bigger than the Sultan's palace. There's a lot of scenes where he's proving all this magical business and how cool he is, and the Sultan tries to break a window, and then it gets fixed immediately, and just kind of padding the story. I felt like, look at all this magical stuff I can do. The magic. So now,
the first time it had ever been committed to the written word. So now it's so like, yeah, but why?
Yeah, but what's the but
what does that mean?
Pushing up your glasses. This is very unrealistic.
But I just don't understand why.
And a sniff in always. But now that all this magic is going on, who comes back in but the magician, who now hears about all this magic? What in the world, all this magic going on?
Magic? Hey, somebody, what's all this magic doing?
Who doing magic over here?
Hey,
So
I can do some magic.
and then he realizes, oh my god, it's Aladdin. He's got the lamp. What in the world? So he finds out that Aladdin doesn't have the lamp. It's not on his person using his magical conjurings, and realizes that it's just in the house. So he pretends to be, and this magician has moved to Africa. He's far away. So he comes back to Arabia, China, whatever they want it to be.
Really hot on the details here.
Yeah. And pretends to be this lamp salesman who's like, I'm trading out new lamps for old lamps, new lamps for old lamps. And the princess is like, we've got an old lamp.
Oh, weird. We have a lamp.
Yeah. Switches it out, gets a new one. He gets the old lamp, rubs it. Genie comes out. He's like, we're taking you all back to Africa. So he goes poof, takes the whole, because now this is the very powerful genie.
Batman's them to Africa.
Basically. So he takes the whole palace, gone in an instant, with the princess. Aladdin is off goofing around doing something else. Now he comes back and says, what in the world's going on? My whole palace is gone. The Sultan's like, we got to get it back. Aladdin, luckily, still has his little ring on with the ring genie. And so he says, ring genie, get everything back. And the ring genie's like, I'm not powerful enough. I can't do that. I can transport you to Africa. So he says, sounds good.
It's like, here we go. Well, we can get you a one-way flight into Dallas, but you'll have to connect in Chicago.
You can't get first class, though. Come on, I'm a ring genie. What do you think? So then he's there. He is able to hook up with the princess, call to her from the window, and is like, hey, here's the plan. You pretend you're like the magician. Which synonymous with the Aladdin Disney story. It's like, oh, this is the vizier taking her, and she's like, actually, I love you, Jafar. Right? That's kind of like what's happening here. So then he gives her some poison. Aladdin gives the princess some poison and says, pretend you like him, seduce him, whatever, and then put this in his cup, and then he'll drink it, and then he'll die.
Okay, I just never understood in the cartoon, why can't Jafar just go and get this stuff himself? If it's all... He's always sending people into the cave.
Because Aladdin is the chosen one.
Yeah, but it doesn't, like, there's all these rules they break of just, like, only the chosen one can enter. But, like, he takes that monkey with him, so the monkey doesn't count, or do animals count or not? And that's just, like, one.
Well, listen, you're not a 9th century Persian person.
And he sends somebody before Aladdin, and they totally screw it up, so it's not, so, I don't know.
Yeah, because they weren't the chosen person.
Right, but...
You got to be the chosen person.
You have to be the chosen.
You have to be the chosen person. And that's what I said
But
at
it
the beginning of
doesn't-
the year. Aladdin opens the cave because he's a chosen person. You just got to accept. Some people are the chosen people and some people are not.
I'm just saying, I felt like the logic in the Disney film. I don't know about this, but then the Disney film seemed a little flimsy.
Well, this one is too. It's the exact same thing. Aladdin's a chosen person. Deal with it. So they kill the magician, stabs him in the chest. They get the lamp back. He's like,
Is
well,
that magic?
I loved magic. And then it betrayed me. Now he's like, genie of the lamp, fly us all back to China. They all fly back to China. The Sultan is like, oh my god, what happened? The princess tells him the whole tale of everything that happens. Now, this is the final little, post-like climax. It's like when you think Jaws is dead, actually
Right, yeah.
he's not. The magician's brother hears about this, wants revenge. They call him the necromancer, which is just a fancy name for another magician.
The necromancer?
Yeah. Or that's his translation. I'm sure it's some other
What a
actual-
title. The necromancer.
So that's what he's called. So then he goes over to where Aladdin's village is and his domain, and there's this healing woman, this divine woman who's able to heal people and whatever. So he goes to where she lives in a cave, steals her identity, is like, I'm going to pretend to be you, and then gets her clothes and covers up his hairy face, and then kills her, and goes up to the princess and her palace,
No?
fooled once about lamp salesman, fooled again, and is like, oh, can I stay here, and can I heal you, and all this other stuff, and she's like, sounds good, you're the healing woman.
Fool me twice.
So she
Can't
goes
get
up.
fooled again.
The healing woman says, you know what would be great for this area of the palace and would really help with all your ailments is a rook egg, which is this giant mythical bird in that
Okay.
mythology.
Okay.
So then the princess is like, oh, easy, say no more. So she rubs the lamp and is like, yo, genie, get us this rook egg straight up. It's explained that this mythical bird is the master of the genies. So it's like a huge affront to steal an egg and put it in your house.
Yeah, okay.
Of course, the genie has to explain all of that to
okay.
to the princess
right.
about, well, this is the rook egg and this is what goes on and it's my master, and he says, oh, well, that whole healing woman, that was actually the magician's brother. So Aladdin pretends he needs healing. The healing woman, who's actually the necromancer, comes up. Aladdin sees him reaching for the knife. Aladdin knows this, already reaching for his knife, stabs him.
Oh.
Aladdin's like, what's going on? And then the princess tells him the whole tale about what goes on. Then the Sultan pops in and is like, hey, what's going on? And then they tell him the whole tale of
never
what's
guess.
going on. And then Aladdin becomes the Sultan and they live happily ever after. And that's the story. And then, at the end of it, when he becomes the Sultan and lives happily ever after, she's like, and let me tell you another story
Oh, God.
from this area.
Is there anything in the flashbacks that help, like, point to characters' point of view of how they might remember a certain thing differently?
Not really.
No. It's all
No.
literally just things.
Right. And sometimes it's not like 70 pages. Sometimes it's only a paragraph
Sure,
or two, but I'm
yeah.
like, well, I don't need to. I remember what happened.
It's like, it could be interesting if they're trying to say something
Right.
about just like, and this is how people embellish or, kind of like tell side truths or, like, and they try to frame it the
Right.
best, all that. So, but if
and
it's
maybe
really
in different,
just like,
in different translations and different things like that, there's some other.
that'd be fascinating.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the things that happen, like you said, different side angles or side narratives or things like that. This collection of stories is pivotal in introducing a lot of narrative devices, or at least is the first instance of certain things. The ending on the cliffhangers was a big deal. As
It
part
sounds
of
like it. That sounds like one of the biggest takeaways from it.
Yeah. And so our
How smart. Got to stay alive.
our definition of what constitutes a cliffhanger is much more narrow than it was because ain't nobody been doing this before.
When your life is on the line, you make them want more.
So some of the stuff, a lot of times it's cut off with the hero in danger or some other kind of trouble, and that's where she stops her narration. Sometimes she'll do it in the middle of an exposition of abstract philosophical principles, and then the king wants to know more about what she thinks about that.
Right.
Or it'll be a complex thing about Islamic philosophy, and he'll want to know
Okay.
more. And so it's not always just from the
Okay,
storytelling
okay.
perspective. In one instance, it was a detailed description of human anatomy, so science, and he's like, "Ooh,
Oh.
I want to know more about that."
Okay.
But no matter what, in any of the things, it's the king's curiosity that will buy her another day of her life. And it
Right.
always ends with her being saved. Each of the translations, sometimes she asks for a
It's
pardon.
like subliminal messaging. It's like, don't kill the girl. Don't kill the girl. Don't kill the girl.
Yeah, takes that
She's
long.
just like been slowly putting that in his head over and over again. It's like, and they don't kill the girl.
In every story.
So, oh, weird. Okay, they don't kill the girl. So I know, weird, right?
How about that? Some other things that pop in here as far as the narrative influences, foreshadowing, early examples of foreshadowing, where you put something in.
Okay.
I felt like the ring genie is like you forget about him and then,
Yeah.
oh no, everything's gone. Well, we still got the ring genie.
And that's why we had that earlier.
Yeah. There are very close similarities to different Cinderella type stories, a young sister confronted by two jealous older sisters about whatever may be the case. There's also a brother variation of that with a tragic ending that happens.
Now
in one
that
of them.
sounds interesting.
There's
all
some
about it.
There's some stories that have unreliable narrators,
Oh.
which is very suspect. There's also one story called The Adventures of Bulukia, which this character travels across the cosmos to different worlds, which you could consider like galactic science fiction.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
There's also the earliest surviving element of literature to mention ghouls or zombies.
Oh,
So
really?
this has the first zombie story in it. It's called The History of Garib and His Brother Agib, in which Garib, an outcast prince, fights off a family of ghouls and then enslaves them and then converts them to Islam. And then the last little thing that's similar is we talked about at the very, very beginning how you were saying J.J. Abrams is held captive
I
and
hope. I
forced to
hope.
write. Stephen King references this in his novel Misery, about a protagonist who's forced to write a novel to keep his captor from torturing him.
Mm.
If you ever read that or seen that movie,
No, that's
he's
fascinating.
taken off of this. You want to go into the Disney stuff a little bit?
The Disney stuff, I mean, it's the kids version of it. It's all the iconography is there, but it doesn't feel like it's very loose. Like
Well, so there was a 1924 silent film version that is called Aladdin, and that has this secondary character called Abu, who is a thief, and a genie grants him 3 wishes, and there's a flying carpet. That kind of stuff is in
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
And then there was a 1940 film called The Thief of Baghdad, which won the Academy Awards for cinematography, production design, and special effects.
My God.
And that has a Jafar character who convinces not Aladdin, but Ahmad to be, who is the Sultan, to pretend to be a peasant, and then throws him in jail. And there's a bunch of stuff that goes on that has nothing to do with anything.
Mhm.
But those kind of elements Disney took from those movies, which were from this, and cobbled it together. But in the Disney version, so it was April of 91. In Disney lore, it's called Black Friday because it was just off the rails and horrible. And they had written music and they had all this stuff. And they demanded a total rewrite, even though the movie was supposed to come out next November.
Oh God.
Like, it takes a long time
Yeah,
to animate
that
stuff.
is no joke.
And there was notes where it's like there was the mom character. They were like, cut the mom. They made Abu into a monkey. They gave the
Oh.
princess a tiger sidekick. There was all this stuff that they added after that Black Friday because they were trying to pull from these other.
I do have a little tiny bit of personal connection
Yeah.
to this. So I was working at Disney Studios. I was walking through the old animation building, and I went, and then I subsequently brought people to see this when they would come and visit. But on the walls of the old animation building, they have tons of conceptual artwork and character design, and like they're really trying to show, and it's from their big movies.
Mhm.
And so they have this conceptual art piece of the genie, but the genie is like grotesque. It's green, so right off the bat, it is a totally different feel than the milky blue that they ended up with. This is like a dirty green. He has black hair and like a goatee. He's like really like detailed fat, like he's
Yeah.
like spilling over, and he looks kind of oafy, and his face looks insecure, and he's kind of like curling in a finger towards his mouth, like oh I don't know, and it just like looks really disgusting, and
Yeah.
and so I'm like, so they were at that point at some point,
Mhm.
like trying to figure this out, and then seeing what it ended up with is it's fascinating to to see like how the vision is shifted and changed by voices in the room.
It almost also fits in directly with the whole concept of the book, which is that it was cobbled together by all of these different stories and how they changed over centuries of time
Right.
to different things and were adapted by different people, and the retranslations changed things, and they pulled from the movies and from the original story and took things and removed things, and it's just this whole, I don't know, it might also be a little bit culturally insensitive
Yeah.
in some ways,
Yeah.
which the original animated film got criticized for as
Right.
well.
And I'm
But it's
wondering how
like,
this new film will do
oh,
on,
we're just
on that basis.
yeah, the mystery and magic of the Far East.
Right.
You know,
It's like, well,
there are people that
it's
actually live
accessible
there.
and you could just communicate with the humans in this world.
yeah, and people actually lived there, and like
Yeah.
maybe they have some take on
I have something to say about it.
right. I will say, just as my last little reference to other material, which I don't know how familiar you are with superheroes, but I didn't think about this at all, and then it threw me for a loop. Green Lantern. Now that you know the original story, so he has a lamp, which
Mm.
is his big
Yeah.
superpower, and then his ring, which also is what powers the other thing.
Those cheating vets. There they go.
So he's Aladdin.
DC always clamoring. There they go. That's fascinating. Never thought about that before,
Yeah.
but that's pretty spot on. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Poor Ryan Reynolds. Stuck inside that Pikachu body now.
Forever.
I thought it should have been Danny DeVito, but
Yeah.
hey kid.
So thoughts?
I'd love to hear you touch on the through line here between all these different iterations, because there's these different translations, different mediums, different movies. Now there's a new movie. There's a movie that everybody knows, but and it's loose in some areas, but then there are some things that definitely do carry on. But what do you see as like the main thing, like the big through line here for this story
Yeah.
through across all mediums?
So what has now become an archetypical storyline that this created and follows through all of them is the rags to riches
Yeah.
story. Starts out bad, stupid, scapegrace
Escape.
at the beginning, and ends up successful, the Sultan. But yeah, that's really what I think. The strange part of it all is the fact that Aladdin was probably most certainly designed by a European Frenchman in the 1700s.
Right.
And that's what people know the 1001 Nights. But there are other rags to riches stories in 1001 Nights that are not this one. So it's not like he invented that
For
format.
some reason, Slumdog Millionaire is now coming to mind of being like another recent rags to riches stories, in I guess in China. We'll just call it all China. Now I'm wondering if there's any influence there.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just, to answer your question, that is what carries over and is the legacy of this story and those series of stories. There's all those little tidbits, but that narrative of somebody starting here in the low place and ascending and then having troubles and trials and tribulations along the way, but in the end, and because in the olden days, if you were wealthy, you were happy,
And it seems to me that being the focus makes sense, because when I don't sense in the material is a really deep, enriching sense of getting a point of view of romantic, coming into yourself as a, like a coming of age.
That's
first
also
love.
a cultural thing too. It was like nobody had time for that. You needed money.
And it wouldn't be accurate because it's developed by a Frenchman.
Right.
So I'm not sensing that in the material. So I'm going, well, so what is the major? Because that's the first and foremost thing, is everything's a love story. But so what else is it? And definitely I'm seeing that. But it's interesting that there's seeming to be not a whole lot of wisdom to be gained on the romanticism angle here. It's just more just like, go for it.
Yeah. And this is what life is, and this is how it works, and you want the princess, and so you go for the princess. Yeah.
And you got to tell those stories too.
And then you got to recount them to somebody else.
Over and over.
All over again.
Over and over. Just so everyone is clear and on the same page, and we'll take you through it again.
Yeah. The whole episode all over again. Oh, look. Emily's here. Hey, Emily, this is what we just talked about for an hour.
And you sit here and listen to it. Well, this has been a fun one, actually. I had a blast with
It's
this.
kind of wacky. I
Yeah.
like reading. I like sometimes not the serious, but just the wacky stories that don't really. They're just fun to read.
Yeah, this was a blast. So, announcement for this week: please tell somebody, share an episode with somebody. Share something interesting you've learned from the show, and spread the word. Help us.
All right. See you all next week.
We'll catch you next week, players.